So amazing to be here and to maybe extend a little bit on the introductions. Mikko, once upon a time you were sitting on my side. You led an amazing pre-seed investment in terralayr and you fell in love with the company so much that you ended up switching the sides from investor to operator. And now you're the commercial officer at terralayr, which is a company that we're very fortunate to be investors in. And Max, I've also had the privilege of getting to know you over the last couple of years and following your amazing journey that essentially solves a lot of headaches for industrial customers in terms of their energy bills. But to then kick off the discussion, the overarching topic is energy resilience and independence. And to steer up the pot a little bit and start off on slightly let's say, controversial note. Europe, we've never had energy independence. We've always shipped in our fuel and our energy for decades and decades, and it has worked. So why do we suddenly talk about energy resilience and independence? Why is that important? Mikko, maybe starting with you.
Yeah, so hello everybody, great to be here, and actually great to see energy becoming a mainstream topic. We've heard energy flexibility being called out as a main topic at the main stage at the opening, and I think this is great to hear. And why is that the case? I think when we talk about resilience, what does it actually mean? In simple terms, it means keeping the lights on in volatile times, but also to control our own energy supply and therefore our own destiny to some extent. And I think this year and also recent years have shown us what could happen and what the impacts are if we do not succeed in controlling energy security and resilience. I mean, there have been several examples since COVID between 2021 and 2025. The European Union has spent €1 trillion more on imports of fossil fuels, which is a huge drain of capital. But not only that, we've seen the Ukraine crisis and war causing consumer prices, industrial prices for energy increase. So we all suffered to some extent from volatility in the market. And in another market, just to name one more example, Spain, we've seen in April what can happen if the system is not stable and resilient, when several generation assets tripped, more than 15 gigawatt of supply leaving the grid and causing a huge blackout as we've almost never seen before in Europe. And I think these are some indicators of where we are not resilient enough and we have to get that control back. And I think there are 3 ingredients to that. First, controlling the energy generation. Renewable power is something we can generate in Germany and beyond instead of fossil fuel imports. Flexibility, which is needed to make supply and demand match. And then it's the electrification of the demand side. I think that's Max's profession. And I think with those 3 ingredients, we can increase our resilience.
Exactly, and I want to dig deeper into the last point that you mentioned about electrification, because to be energy independent, there are 2 sides of the equation. You have to produce renewable energy, but then you actually have to be able to use the energy that you produce. And in Europe, at the moment, we're only 25% electrified, so only 25% of our economy runs on electricity. Research says that that could be up to 90%. So I really want to understand, Max, what are the bottlenecks? Why are we not electrifying faster? And how could we electrify faster?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Hi from my end, Max. I'm focusing on medium-sized enterprises across Europe. And I think that's exactly where kind of the challenge, the problem, but also the opportunity starts. We do see a magnitude of problems in those companies, in the market. And one of the bottlenecks is focus. What do you focus on? What is the main priority? What is the main problem that you should do? And I think in times where top lines are eroding, where you have people problems, right? Where you have an energy price that is still double from what we had 5 years ago, we just see that the energy kind of the attractiveness of the energy topic has kind of diminished because there's so many other problems, right? I think what companies need to understand with the electrification is that it's such a big opportunity, right? I always refer to, and I think that also some of you might work in like low margin businesses, right? And I think that when you look into energy, you have a bottom line effect. People rarely focus on bottom line effects. They're more focused on the next case and the next contract. But if you save 200,000 euros on the energy bill and you have a 5% margin business, you can calculate yourself how much more revenue you would have to make in times with a lot of volatility. So I think it really comes down to making the solution simple. If you say electrification to a company that has so many problems, they don't know where to start and where to end, how much money it costs, and all those kind of things. And number two, it's really about the openness to change for the companies, to change a setup, to change a thinking that has been in there for quite some time now. And I think the combination it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and also like kind of to build on the energy resilience topic, like of course it's on top of minds and agenda from the geopolitics environment, but I think the point that a lot of people miss is that renewable energy is the cheapest source of energy. Yeah. If you don't, you're not competitive if you run on fuels, and I'm surprised that more people don't understand that. And what is the bottleneck in educating the market that it's about competitiveness ultimately?
I think it actually starts with that everybody who talks about the studies and does the studies, me sometimes included, doesn't really take the customer into account when it comes to being sensible of what the problems actually are. Because, I mean, we all know about the energy market and the energy price volatility. Yeah, there is a difference of 16 cents every day, and it's getting more and more and more the more you push renewables into the market. But that will require people to change a shift system that has worked for 50 years. Right? So now approach your people and talk to them and tell them we have to change a shift system. So I think that it really comes down to making sure that we have the solutions in place and that we have the solutions thought through for the customers, that they have one place to go to where they understand everything energy, that makes them still produce, still stable, and still follow their operations. And that's why, for example, being more concrete there, I really like the opportunity that we currently see with more transparency, more data on the energy consumption side, but then also a more opening towards the market when it comes to, for example, batteries. Yeah, because that kind of gives us an opportunity to say, I do change according to energy volatility without changing my process, which, as far as I know so far, is the best way to talk to the customer.
Yeah. And then back to Mikko, to you at kind of the grid scale batteries, and flexibility is the secret word. But can you explain to like a 5-year-old, so what happens if we produce renewable energy that we don't have enough storage for?
Yeah, so combining that with the question you asked before, renewable generation in itself is the cheapest source of power that we have. But standalone, it doesn't solve the problem because they are volatile, right? We are weather dependent on the generation side. Now, unfortunately, power has the characteristic that supply and demand need to match at every single second in time. And to make this match, Max can probably confirm that not every consumer, not every industrial plant can change their consumption pattern. So we have to find other ways to make it match and stabilize the grid. And that's where you need so-called flexibility. It's basically storing excess energy when it's there and making it available at later times. A pretty simple principle when it's needed. This is one element to the solution, how we can overcome the grid bottleneck. In Germany, we have a situation where there's a lot of wind power generation in the north and a lot of industrial consumption in the west and in the south. And you need to get the electricity over there, but there are physical copper bottlenecks that we have to overcome. Now, unfortunately, we are 6,000 kilometers and 7 years behind on grid expansion. We can't be fast enough there. So storage is part of the solution to overcome that.
And if I just might, I think this wording of flexibility is something that is very important to clarify also in the market, because I like the way that you guys think about the flexibility because you take up the flexibility. Yeah, I think that when I talk to customers and it's about flexibility, everybody out of a sudden thinks they have to fully change their process now, right? I have to produce whenever the sun is shining. That doesn't work. My customer demands the product X, Y, Z. That is not the kind of flexibility we talk about right now. And I also don't agree with all the narrative out there in the market that we have to fully flexibilize the processes internally. We're just not there yet from the company perspective. That's why, in my opinion, it's very important to frame flexibility exactly just like you did right now, where you say, on a macro level, I have battery storages that help me flexibilize so that my processes internally can stay exactly the same for now.
And if you had to put like a pendulum to the left or all the way to the right, how much of the flexibility problem will be solved by these grid scale batteries like terralayr is doing versus kind of businesses, industrial businesses like you serve, Max, or even households where we, let's say plug in whatever we can flexibilize at home? Where is that pendulum?
So I think storage in general plays a huge role, and battery is one element and one technology in that regard. So we have, I think, more than 20 gigawatt hours of household storage installed in the field, which is a great source of flexibility, but it cannot do the whole job. We need grid scale flexibility, we need battery storage, we need hydropower plants. We also need some gas peakers who can, in case of no wind and no PV production for quite some time, jump in and cover the demand. So I think flexibility in that regard is probably, don't nail me on the number, but probably half to 2/3 of the solution. Now, demand side flexibility is certainly an important lever too, but it can't bridge the whole gap. And that's why it's really a holistic exercise, and there is no one silver bullet, but it's a system change. I think energy transition is such a comprehensive exercise and process. It really requires a whole lot of things to work together, and there can't be a focus just on wind turbines or just on flexibilizing my production chain.
Yeah.
And so we've talked now a lot about flexibility, but Max, you do more than flexibility. And can you tell us in more detail, also explaining to a 5-year-old, how does your software help your customers cut costs?
Sure. Starting at first, we just help reduce energy cost, full stop. That's all we do, and a lot more naturally. I think when you talk to companies, there's just several things that you can do. Number one is you consume, and on the other hand, you procure. Yeah, and both ends are actually something where you can save money. When it comes to the consumption side, I think it's quite easy, because in the end, people look into the data once a month right now, or every second week or so. It's rarely discussed. I don't want to include a new process, but what we actually do is we have a very light product that just observes the data all the time, and the only thing you need to trust me with is if you look at the data once a month versus 24/7, the 24/7 cuts down the waste. Yeah. On the procurement end, I think it starts very standard with just pushing more transparency into the market. Customers have been working with their utilities, with their partners for quite some time. Yeah. And we just need to increase the amount of transparency in the market and to teach how well you can optimize your procurement without changing anything in your process. And I think that is very, very important. And then there's also a lot of regulations. If I might add to the battery question, I think what's quite interesting is that we have a subsidy that is being implemented in Germany at the Industriestrompreis, industry electricity price, and that is coming this year. And it's mainly focused on the plastics companies and the metal companies, for example. Companies today just don't want to invest a lot in energy. Yeah, it's just a fact. What this subsidy does is you get a refund on your electricity bill, and you have to invest 50% of the refund into something renewable, where battery is one of the most subsidized things that you can do. I'm quite eager to see that, yeah, because right now nobody's really investing, I would say. But then you will have like an external push, yeah, that will kind of help you there.
And to keep developing on that point, both of you have raised a lot of money. You've just closed your Series C, was 192 million euros. You've closed very ambitious Series A, 16 million euros. So you're kind of ready to roll. You have the money in the bank account. And if you keep kind of think about it, and both of your solutions play a huge role in the energy transition and energy independence. So if you had the magic wand that could help you accelerate your business, and by definition that also helps all of us accelerate energy transition, what else would you love to throw in there to enable you to scale and grow as fast as possible?
I think for me, it really starts with the acceptance in the medium-sized enterprises that energy is a topic that is quite easy to solve and that you should look at. That is the one thing, right? So I spent my whole day speaking to medium-sized enterprises. We've made it very clear that the prices that we have, the modules that we have, are super light touch, limited effort for the customer, and that there is proven savings. Yeah, I think it's just very, very important that medium-sized enterprises open the door to the opportunity that there is a saving behind the electricity bill. Yeah.
And how do we make them learn faster? How do we get the word out that, you know, if you're not doing it, it's just money left on the table?
Yeah, I think it's speak a lot. that's where it starts. Speak a lot, improve a lot. Yeah, speak a lot, improve a lot. Medium-sized enterprises, they live by references, right? They live by trust, which is so important. So important. And I think that just by doing a good job with your customer base, speaking a lot, speaking about the opportunity a lot, having the proof points, that's what's accelerating.
Mikko, what would you like to see to be able to grow out even faster and solve our flexibility problems?
I like adding to that. I think it's also a bit of a mindset shift that we are fostering, right? We are coming from talking about kind of idealistic ideas of a green and sustainable energy future, which is right. However, it's not the narrative that wins, I think. It's about faster, cheaper, and better, right? So, and I think everybody who deals with energy, from the consumer to the industrial plant to the regulator and the government, which are very important stakeholders for our business, because they decide on the framework and also the grid access for our assets that are needed for energy transition. They all should understand the value added and the ROI of energy, of flexible energy investments and the solutions that come with it. And I think if this logical kind of thinking is ingrained in the decisions we are making in politics, in regulation, in grid rules, for example, then it will help to accelerate the transition.
Yeah. And there are also a lot of investors in the room. So I also wanted to kind of flip the tables in a way that, you know, we're always investors looking to invest in businesses like yourself. And again, like what you're building benefits all of us. If you win, we all literally win. So to flip the script around, how are the investors behaving? Is there anything that you would want to see from the capital markets, investors, to also help this transition?
It's quite interesting because we founded the company 4 years ago, and I think the labels we got quite changed. Yeah, coming back to your point, so in the beginning, it was ecoplanet is clean tech. Yeah, that was the label of the day, I would say. Right now, it's energy tech, and I think that's very good. That's very good to look into that one because from a financing point of view, we have to think exactly like the medium-sized enterprises do, right? And we need to, the investors also need to enable the startups with naturally the funds. Yeah, that is super important. But I think getting the word out, educating is the most important thing. I mean, coming back to your report that you're currently doing, right? Maybe bridging there. I think it's great because we need to get the word out. We need to get the word out of the importance of the opportunity and especially of the simplicity of what we do. And it's a joint effort, in my opinion.
So I think mastering the energy transition is both about innovation and innovative solutions, but it's also just about deploying capital in capital-intensive solutions and assets, right? And I think that is it's an interesting area to start a new company because asset investment typically goes in the direction of infrastructure investors, right? Who are looking for low cost of capital, low risk, sleep well, earn my money over 10, 20 years. Now, there might be new asset classes like batteries, where this is not so trivial. In the beginning, there might be risks associated to the asset class, but you still need huge amounts of capital. Now you have a trade-off between going to a VC, whose equity is quite expensive, versus an infrastructure investor who needs big checks, like hundreds of millions just for the first ticket. And between those two, there is, I would say, a certain gap in Europe. Where we lack some willingness for the infra-style investors to also go into growth stage businesses and support their growth without directly forcing them to sell the company to a PE.
I know, I completely agree. I mean, it's crazy. In growth stages, it's like 80% of the growth stage capital is American. And Europe needs to step up. But we're coming to an end, and Max, you sort of mentioned the campaign that we as Norrsken have launched, so maybe a few words on that. We recently launched a very ambitious campaign called Electro Union. It's a very clear call to action directed towards EU. Today in Europe, we have, as I mentioned in the beginning, electrified 25% of our economy. We could electrify up to 90% of our economy. And so we really want to push all the politicians and business leaders towards combined goal that by by 2040, we should electrify at least 50% of the European economy. And Mikko and terralayr, you're also part of the coalition driving this change. I hope I can convince Max to also be a co-signer of this. But essentially, we hope that that's what the world would look like. So maybe the final closing question, hopefully from glass half full. What do you think the world will look like by 2040? When you have succeeded and your solutions have scaled, what does the world look like?
So I think if we succeed and if we all succeed in driving the transition, the European world will look much more comfortable in terms of energy cost. We as a consumer, we as businesses will feel that, but also we will be much more resilient towards threats from the outside. And I think that's a very current topic that we should prepare for. So we will feel safer, we will be safer, and also we will have in our day-to-day life a more comfortable environment. I think so. Very practical example. We are driving an electric vehicle. I must say it's much more comfortable than a combustion engine. I know it's a very emotional debate in Germany, but we will see more examples of that.
And Max, what does your dream world look like?
Perfect. I think I fully second what you just said. I would just add one thing. In 10 years, I want to see a similar amount of medium-sized companies in Germany and Europe than I see today. And it's a risk that we don't. And I think that's the most important message. If we don't get this right, if we don't work together with the medium-sized enterprises, I'm 100% sure that we will lose a lot of companies, even more than we do today. I know energy is only one part of it, and you need to solve other problems as well, but it is part of it. And I think that if we succeed, we will see a continued density of companies in Europe and in Germany as well. Yeah.
Amazing. On that happy note, let's hope we reach our 2040 targets. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you.